welcome to Lead a Horse to Water, the equine training and behaviour podcast. And as always, I'm your host, Trudy Dempsey. Today, I'm really lucky to be joined by Naomi Garner, who is not only one of my ex-students, but she's a friend and colleague, and she's also presenting at our September event at Understand Horses, the Pro Trainers Forum. So let me introduce Naomi. She began her career in equine podiatry in 2019, training with Equine Podiatry Training Ltd. Owning nervous horses herself shaped her desire to work with cases others often avoid. Over time, she developed a practical, welfare-led approach to supporting anxious, dangerous, and physically compromised equines. This led her to specialise further in behaviour change and positive reinforcement, continuing her education with Understand Horses. Naomi's work focuses on ethical, non-forceful solutions that prioritise both horse and human safety. Hi Naomi, it's great to have you on the podcast.
Yeah.
So as always with brand new guests, I really love to dig in a little bit. People like to hear the backstory. So take us back to wherever, you want to, as far back as you want to, and, give us a little potted history of how you got to where you are today. Your bio tells us the main points, but we like to hear the human points in between all that.
I guess I feel like my story so far has been on the shorter side because I didn't do horses as a child. I got into them when I was about 16. I'd always wanted to, but it was never a possibility for me. I did music instead, which was amazing growing up. And then as we moved around, suddenly the option of riding lessons was available, but coming into it a bit later, I wasn't that sure. Riding was fun, but it was also, I just quite liked being around the horses. And very quickly, we decided to get into horse ownership because we had a small little paddock on the garden and we bought a lovely mare and were very, very lied to about what she was like. And we were complete novice owners, so that didn't go particularly well. She was lovely. I'd love to have her today, but not back then. And then we got Caramac, my horse Mac, and I've had him ever since. So I got him when I was 17, so that's 13 years now. And he's so domesticated, is what I call him. Now that I know more, he was awesome as, my proper first horse. He was just amazing. He's calm, he's patient, he knows what he's doing, he's a true gentleman. And after a couple of years, that almost came a bit frustrating for me because he would just do, and I could tell he didn't perhaps want to do. And I'd seen a little bit about positive reinforcement for dogs because I've always had dogs. And I thought, I can clicker train my dogs. And I'd done the odd little bit with the dog and was just like, I can do it with Mac because Mac doesn't seem to be enjoying stuff. So I started the odd targeting with Mac. And then I was like, no, I want a project. So that's when I went and found Aries, who was living with a charity on Dartmoor as a Dartmoor pony. So he was still completely unhandled at 6 years old. And they warned me that buying one much older was much harder than buying a youngster. And I wasn't having it. I was like, nope, that's the pony for me. And I had decided that everything I was going to do with him was going to be positive reinforcement. That was going to be my challenge. And I've now had him for 8 years and we have a great relationship now and everything has come along very nicely, but it really made me realize that if I could do something with him, I could probably do it with any horse. And I had both of them. They had both gone. Well, Aries was always barefoot. Mac I took barefoot with a lovely EP and I was working with her and I was like, great, I'm working with Aries, I'm managing to do stuff with Aries. And I was like, right, I'm going to get into behaviour and training. And I was looking at all these courses, couldn't find a single course I liked. A lot of them seemed quite focused on maybe negative reinforcement, and I couldn't find anything in this country that I felt I could do. And my lovely equine podiatrist said, why don't you trim? I was already kind of adding in little bits of trimming in between her visits. I was just touching up the feet. And she said, why don't you do this? And I was like, don't know if it's my thing, but I'll apply. It's a potential career. And I applied. And about 8 weeks later, I got a letter saying that I hadn't got in. And at the time, they were only taking about 10 and they'd just taken another person from my area. So they were like, we're wanting to spread people out. We've already taken one from your area, so try again next year. And I was surprisingly heartbroken. And I was like, maybe I did want that a little bit more than I thought I did. And then I was having to look back into behaviour because I was like, no, actually, I do want to work with horses. And then they emailed me back saying, we want you. That was that. I got on the course and spent a couple of years learning all about hooves. And it's a major passion. And I was like, actually, it became, because I was still fascinated by training and behaviour, but I was very practical in the idea that it needed to make money. I needed a job. And actually I thought, great, I can combine the trimming with the behaviour. You know, can I be the most ethical trimmer that I can be in that moment? You know, can I be the one that people use if they know they've got a tricky horse? And you know, I've done some courses with you, Trudy, and I was starting to build up that kind of a bit of confidence that, yeah, you know, I can do this. And even though a lot of my clients are not hiring me to train their horses, they are hiring me because they know I am someone who will, you know, trimming will happen and not in a forceful way. And perhaps they don't know why it's happening. I'm not always saying, look, I'm doing this and that's why I'm managing. I just kind of have, I don't know, somehow picked up she just does stuff and it happens. And I'm there like, actually, you know, I'm doing this, this and this, but they don't know.
Because most clients, whether they're a training client or a trimming client, they really don't want the whole history necessarily. I mean, some do. If it was you or I, we'd be like, right, what are you doing? How are you doing it? Why are you doing it that way? But not everybody does. And, you know, I think I remember talking to you about this, you know, a while back. It is a niche because I often get asked to help clients who do have tricky horses around trimming, but I'm not a trimmer. So you combining, you know how you're going to have to hold that. I mean, like you, I used to do my own, but, you know, not in a way that you can do as many as you do in a session of trimming. And I think it's important for people to understand, you know, how do you need to hold the hoof up and how long, and how, you know, how can you avoid the knee being bent too much and things like that we don't think about outside of it. I remember being on a training course that I was doing for Brook vets, and they were looking at picking up donkey's feet, and that they were so strict. The staff were like, no, you've gone past the angle of the knee that is comfortable for the animal. And I'm like, nobody thinks about this normally, apart from trimmers and vets, you know, and these guys. And so, yeah, I love that you're combining the two. And so is that kind of where you're hoping to put your sort of talents, or are you also taking clients that would just love to know how to clicker train? I'm hoping the answer's still yes on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm building up with doing your course last year and really building that confidence. I've made more time for just training clients now. You know, stuff like loading or, you know, getting stuff on vocal controls and trying to move away from it just being trimming. But I am a trimmer at the end of the day, and most of the time I get into clients by doing trimming, and then I'll be like, oh, you're struggling with that. And they'll be like, what would you do about that? And then you never know, 2 months down the line, we're learning how to do something completely different. But I am making time for more just training work because I love it. I mean, you always feel that little bit of imposter syndrome that you're not quite right, but there's so many horses that we could potentially be helping out there that I see some of the stuff that's being done. So especially when I'm out on yards, I mean, I see a lot of horses, and even if I'm not there to train, sometimes I will see their training and I'm like, okay, so we're happy to do kind of nice, quiet, calm work for trimming with me, and then you're going to go and take them in the school and do that. And I'm trying to bridge without ever insulting without anyone, without ever feeling someone feel like I'm judging them in any way. But being able to try and bring up conversations on what are we seeing stress-wise, you know, are they actually comfortable enough to do that? Because so much of my work, especially, you know, seeing more lame horses and getting your eye in on what's comfortable, even, okay, behaviourally, maybe that's not great, but actually, are they just physically capable of what's being asked of them? And the more you see and learn, just the harder it is to watch sometimes.
It absolutely is. But I think really you're in a great position, and you sort of sit somewhere between vets, owners, behaviour consultants, in that you have a foot in several camps there. And that then people can maybe, you know, sort of congregate around that side of it. And I can see you doing, you know, sort of evening talks in the wintertime for your vet practices, because they struggle, you know, if they want to go and take hoof x-rays, for instance, you know, it can be really hard for the vet to handle a hoof. And if they've got a specialist, I love it. I love where you're going with it. And watch this space. This is a very young talented person who, and the thing about imposter syndrome, I mean, I've talked about it on the podcast so many times because it seems endemic in the population of clicker trainer, positive reinforcement trainers, which is nuts. But I think it's because of the pressure of the more traditional training, and we think therefore not only are we got to be good at what we do, we've got to be really extra good at what we do.
We've got to rise above it all, and I'm just there like, oh, where is the limit there? We can't
It's
be
really hard.
perfect.
We wouldn't expect negative reinforcement trainers, pressure and release trainers, to hold themselves to those standards, but somehow we do. So yeah, I hope that maybe we can talk about that on the forum day. Maybe there'll be enough people in the round table at the end where we can all sort of push that one around a little bit, because I think it's an interesting one. However good you get, you still have that nagging little doubt at the back of your mind, don't you? It's really annoying. Anyway, just to move on, your title for the forum in September is Safe, Stress-Free Hoof Care, which sounds like the perfect scenario to me. Tell us a little bit. I mean, it's 45 minutes and then you've got Q&A afterwards, so obviously people can listen and then ask you specific questions. What are you going to be talking about ish, and sort of sell it for us? Let's have a promo.
I'm trying to hit 3 main areas which I feel are important for the average owner or the hoof care professional to be very aware of, and what I see when I'm out and about, the things that perhaps go wrong. First is just the horse's ability to actually have its hooves handled. I mean, whether the horse has ever actually learned how to pick them up correctly. Do they actually pick them up quietly and correctly and happily, or are they just like, oh my god, you're going to steal my foot, so here's my foot, and I'll just kind of panic about that. If we have discomfort, are we setting them up for success in their ability to actually cope with what's going on? Because we just think, oh, they're just having a foot up, they've got 3 others, and people are just like, yeah, they can balance like that. And I'm like, when would they ever do that in the wild? They would have a foot up and it would go straight back down again. And even just the act of standing still and having a foot up is incredibly difficult, and they need to have practiced that. And if they have a sore foot, what can we be doing about that? How can we still be making the trim likely happen, but making the horse as possible, God words, so that everything is set up for the best outcomes? Because how many times I see horses just shoved in the middle of a busy area, loads of coming and goings. They're looking everywhere. They can't be keeping still if their head's over there and then their head's over there, or they're uncomfortable, or they've got arthritis and they physically can't pick up their front feet because their hocks are sore. How can we be actually going, okay, yes, I could just force their foot up, sure, but I'm going to have a really annoyed horse and I'm going to end up annoyed myself. And if I'm getting annoyed, everyone's annoyed. It's going to be much harder to work with. And that kind of comes into my second kind of bracket that I think is really important, is finding and keeping the right person for your team. Because a lot of people just go with the person that's there, and that might be fine. That might be absolutely fine for one horse and they never have an issue. Or they'll just be like, well, I know he's great with all of those horses, but, just this one horse, it's not working out. But, they do all my horses. And I'm like, okay, but for this one horse, it's not working. We need to change that. And unfortunately, there's a lot of hoof care providers who are tired, they're physically strained, they've got 40 horses left to see, they're in a rush, as practical life is. And if your horse needs more time, then you need to be saying to them, okay, I'm paying you to come and see my animal, and this is my expectations. And it's being upfront in saying, this is what I do, this is my training style, this is how I do it, this is where we need to be, and having the confidence to say, are you the right person to do this for me? And also having the confidence to say no and say, let's stop here. Because there's always that, oh, I can just pick it up one more time and we'll just get that bit done. And that's always the time when the horse has a really bad outcome. So the confidence to pick the right person and keep them understanding their needs and combining their needs with your needs. Because at the end of the day, like, I need a certain thing to actually be able to do the job. There's an expectation on a lot of clients that, you're going to get all 4 feet done. Is that even possible with this horse at that time? And, understanding that if your horse is fidgeting, that you need to say stop sooner, because especially pain in the horse, but pain in the humans, because this is a job that near the end of the day, it hurts, is going to bring frustration. And when the horse is frustrated, it comes into my third thing,
Segue, shall we
which
say,
is
Naomi? I'm already looking forward to the presentation because I'm loving your segues.
my third thing is the horse saying no and retraining the no. Because I see a lot of horses that bite, that kick, that pull away, that will run away the minute they see a person. And the horse has got to the point where they've escalated that they have to say that as the no, and that works. And how can we make it safe and the horse understand that they can offer a smaller, safer behaviour that still means no? And we go, okay, that's your no. And then we work towards getting the yes again. Because I think so many times, and it's difficult. I mean, if you're nailing a shoe in, you are stuck, you need that foot. But how can we have said, oh, they're saying no, they're starting to say no now, and we need to kind of say, oh, is there a second we can stop in advance so that the horse, by the time the horse is like, no, I'm not coping, that we've already stopped, it's already safe, they're not going to have that stress because we've already thought about the fact that they've said that. They've given us the sign, the movement, they've touched something, they've done something that we've allowed them to specifically say is no. And it's really, really quick to train if you try it. It's really quick. They learn
People
to
don't have to have positive reinforcement in their toolkit to do this. It's not impossible to do just by watching your horse. So I'm so excited about this.
It's just it's because obviously most of the time for a lot of my clients I can't actively use positive reinforcement. I'm in a situation where I still have a job to do. It's got to get done, and a lot of my clients are quite anti-food. Even if I wasn't using food, scratches, it takes longer. Some people are like, oh, we're on the clock here. But being really aware of the horse can make things happen. Can I have stopping at that tail swish instead of stopping at the kick? Because if we do that, everyone's safer and everyone's happier. The horse isn't building those cycles of that behavior working, and suddenly you have a horse that doesn't kick anymore. And you're like, well, now we can work on the horse actually enjoying the process, but can we just make it not terrible for a second?
I love it. And I mean, it fits in so beautifully to the rest of the presentations. And just to say, I think we're starting at 1 p.m. British summertime. So that's a morning in the States. And we're going right through 7 hours worth of conversations like this, presentations followed by Q&As. So, and they all slot in beautifully. I know Justine's going to look at the state of training and where we are at the moment. I'm going to be looking at how we can set things up to be a lot easier for our horses to know what's going on. And then Kate's going to take that specifically into a mounting block. You're going to be talking about hooves, and exactly the same information in part of it is those patterns that we can set up to help our horses. And then we've got Krista talking about patterns in hers, and I just, the whole thing just feels like it's meant to sit together. I'm so excited.
And I think that's the thing when it comes to good training and behavioral work, is actually the fundamentals are the same across everything. And being concise and consistent and someone that they can trust for everything. Even if you're not using clicker training, even if you're using punishment, if you were really consistent with your punishment, the horse would understand better. It's the understanding that we as humans have got to put more thought into that. Because we're messy.
We're absolutely messy. But I just want to end, well, first of all, by saying thank you so much. And I can't wait till September, end of September, for our forum. And you can get tickets for that at understandhorses.com. It's still on £35, which is the early bird price. That will go when, I don't know how many tickets are sold. So, you don't know when that's going to go. So get your ticket. But I also wanted to touch on one thing that you mentioned, and that was thinking about the trimmer. And I think we often don't think about that side of it. We think about it's our money, we're spending it, and trimmers, it's hard work. It is physically hard work, isn't it? So, I hope that people will take that away from what you're saying. It's not just about choosing the right trimmer, it's about choosing the right trimmer for you and looking after them as well, because it's such a tough job that you guys do. And kudos to you and thanks to you for the job you do. So yeah, look forward to, we'll be having some practices before then, but I can tell you're super slick, so we're not going to have any problems in that department, Naomi. And I'd love for you to come back on the podcast at some point, maybe over winter when you're less busy, and we do a full length one. Maybe some things will come up in your presentation in September that we want to unpack a little bit more, but that would be really awesome. So thank you for joining me today, and see you soon.
Yeah.